Hello everyone, Brave here. Welcome to part 2 of my Rockman 7FC tutorial series. In this part we're going to be going over how you can replay sprites and also how you can edit the game's palette in order to add additional colors or just change colors or something like that. So we can't really do anything in the main menu here. I already have promotion open, so if you open yours won't look exactly like mine. I'm using an older version, so some of the icons are outdated, but it should be more or less the same. My layout is also a bit different, but that's okay. You can easily either make it the same or find what you need here. So to start things off, let's open our folder, our game folder, and we'll be looking for rockman.bmp. There it is, because this is the file we're gonna be editing. I'm just gonna change my window sizes here. So for this tutorial, I'm just gonna be editing Mega Man sprites. So we're gonna also open up our opening up our sprite sheets that we got in the last video. So as you can see, the one we got from Sprites Inc. has a fixed palette, and down here, the bottom right, you can see the color palette. There's the color palette tab. You can enable it in the options menu if it's not already enabled. It's right here. But as you can see, it's a fixed palette, but if we go to the other image from Spriter's resource, it's not. It will let you choose if you want to use the images palette, make a palette for the image, or if you want to use the palette from rockman.bmp. So let's say you like the palette, and we're gonna do this. And again, make sure you have nearest color picked, because error diffusion will mess up the image. So well, in this case, error diffusion worked, but I believe in most cases it doesn't. It'll have like random pixels sometimes, or maybe if it's just current palette, I'm not sure. Yeah, there you go. So it does this, and it looks really bad. So don't use error diffusion. Use nearest color if you're gonna do current palette. So I just showed optimized palette is just the images palette, so it'll be the same. As you can see, it has its own palette. It's different from rockman.bmp's palette, but if we want to make it the same palette, current palette, and there it is. It now shares a palette with rockman.bmp. So the only difference between this is that if you do optimized, then you have to transfer the colors from the sprite sheets palette to rockman.bmp. And if you do it just like this, you can copy it over from your sprite sheet to rockman.bmp if you use current palette. Let's say I want to keep my original sprite sheet colors, which is only really one because white is the other color. So I want to make it the same color as the original. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to find where this black is. Well, I don't really need to do black, but let's do blue. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it into here. So by doing this, I have added the palette to the palette color to the palette, and will let me use it in the sheet. So we're going to just do this, paste this here in the same spot that it is in the other palette, and then we'll use the bucket tool, which is F, turn isolated fill off, and then bucket the entire thing. And then we'll continue doing that for black. So black is here. We'll paste this as black, and we'll bucket tool this, and we will do it for white as well. Then you need to make it transparent so you can bring it over without any of the extra stuff. So by default, the first color is always transparent, but say you want it to be like the last color in the palette. You can just press this little button in the top left, swap it, and then your transparency color is now green. And it will also be your right-click brush. So currently my left-click brush is black and my right-click is green. So then we can make this green. We'll make both of these green. And then we can copy this with this tool over here, the Get Brush tool, and B is the shortcut for that. So you just click and drag through the area that you want. So let's say we want this, or actually let's grab the idle sprite. And we can flip this with X, and then we'll just put it here for now. So another thing to note is that rockman.bmp's palette is actually the palette that the entire game uses. So anything you change here in this palette will change the palettes for the rest of the images in the game. It won't show up in your folder, but in game it will affect it. So for example, in one of my older mods, I had replaced this red color with a lighter shade to make Proto Man's color a lighter red. And it's most apparent in Shade Man stage. I'll show some screenshots of comparing the original and my old mod. But basically what happened was it changed most notably the Pumpkin Mini Bosses palette and the Boss Rooms palette, so the tile set palette. So it made those from a darker red into a lighter red. It didn't look as good because I had changed the actual palette instead of just adding the color. So be wary if you're going to edit colors directly, which is why I usually keep the colors at the bottom because this is free space. So you might also notice that there are two palettes here. So here's one at the top and here's one at the bottom. So the reason for that is the top palette is your solid colors and your bottom colors are like your flashing or transparency colors. So for example, in Shade Man stage, anything that is using this bottom palette will become black in the area where you need to light the torches, which I'll also show that off, two screenshots. So for example, Mega Man by default uses the solid colors, but if you were to make him out of the transparency or flashing colors, he will actually turn invisible as long as the rest of the stage. So I'll show that. And also in Spring Man stage, with the flashing textures in the back, if you make it using this palette, you might also flash as well. So be wary of that as well. So if you want to do like cool effects, like make it harder or something, you can always make Mega Man invisible in certain areas using this. Or you can make Mega Man flash for no reason in areas like this. Or if you want to make it easier, you can make, like for example, the black area in Shade Man stage. If you want to make it using the solid colors, then it will not turn invisible when you get to that part because it's made using the top palette. Hey guys, Future Brave here. Something I discovered during editing regarding palettes is that while there is a second palette for transparency, sometimes the solid colors do need to become black, and in that case what the game does is it will take whatever color something currently is, so say it's Mega Man's blue, and it will take the next 3 colors above it and then fade to black when there's no more colors. So what I've done here in this palette is, as you can see, I have 4 colors that get darker as you go up, and so that's because I have my main color at the bottom, and then as it fades into black, it will take the next 3 colors up, instead of if I were to just put the color here, for example, then it would fade into white, and then gray, which you don't want. You want it to look more clean, so here it would be yellow, and then darker yellow, darker yellow, darker yellow, and then black. So it's just so that doing this makes it so it doesn't when it fades, it doesn't turn into like random colors, and it just looks nicer in general. So when you're adding colors, keep in mind to do this if you want to make cleaner transitions when pausing or unpausing, which is when it's used mostly. If that doesn't bother you that much, you can just put colors wherever. But if you want to keep that like neat niceness in mind, try and do something like this. And that's all. I'll give it back to Past Brave now. So what I'm going to quickly do now is I'm going to bring over the sprites from this sheet to this one, and I'll go through the entire sheet, and I'll just speed up the video while I'm doing this. When I come across something I think is important, I'll stop and give some commentary as to what I'm going to be doing, and hopefully this will help if you're doing this as well. So just, you can skip to different parts. I'll probably put timestamps in the description, or if they work, the little chapter things. So you can just skip to the different points of interest, and yeah, so I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, so one thing you should note is that when you're using the bucket tool with F, make sure you select isolated fill when you're bucketing certain things, so that you don't just bucket every single color. So like we did with the thing, you don't want it to make it all the white areas blue, you just want like certain areas, right? So just click this, pretty self-explanatory, but whatever. Alright, one thing to note is that there are certain limits to how much you can actually put sprites in. So for example here, this sprite, this running sprite, is a bit too big. As you can see, it kind of conflicts with this area here. So I'm going to have to make it like 1 pixel shorter. So I'm just going to grab this and, whoops, and pull it in 1. And that should fix the problem. But this is mostly trial and error where the actual lines are, but it is pretty grid-like, so figuring it out isn't too difficult, but it's just figuring it out that can be annoying sometimes, because it's not the same for each sheet. Some sheets have more wiggle room than others. Like Mega Man's, he doesn't give you too much room. Like here, you only have like 2 pixels of space between this that you can use. So just be wary of that when you're picking your sprites. One more thing is that if you've selected something and you want to go back to the paintbrush, just click this little button here. What you can also do is press and hold to get a bunch of different types of brushes. So you're most of the time going to stick with the single pixel, so just worry about tapping it once and it'll give you the single pixel back if you happen to have grabbed something and wanted to move it. Alright, so there isn't actually climbing frames for this, so I'm just going to leave them as they are by default, but I'm going to give them an original, the original color we gave the other ones. So this darker blue I'm going to add to each of these. And there we go. So another thing is you can see here that there's a bunch of duplicate frames. So what this actually allows is, if you want to, you don't have to. This is actually your blinking shooting frame, and this is your sidestep shooting frame. So if you want, you can actually make these new sprites and not just duplicates. So I'm going to do that just to show off how that works. And another thing is you want to try and line up the buster so that the buster shots don't look out of place. So in this case, it's a bit lower than it should be. So I'm just going to move it so it extends out like this. You can also cheat a little bit and change the buster sprite cheat in the game. I think it's buster.bmp. But the problem with that is it won't actually affect the properties of the buster. It will just, it will change how it looks, but not how it actually functions. So you might not want to do that. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because when it's that long, it looks kind of weird. Doesn't matter if you make it a little bit smaller, just as long as it works, I suppose. So, yeah. So similarly with the standard shooting sprites and the sidestep sprite, there are also extra frames for the ladder climbing sprites. So you can make them match the base sprite. So I'm going to edit these so they match as well. Well, not this middle one because it's already pretty good, but the first and last one I will edit. So I'll be doing that now. Okay, so for the charging sprites, what I usually do is let's close this first. I'll open a new project, and doesn't matter what height, as long as it's like big enough. So we'll do like 500 by 500. Select, take from current project for our palette. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take the grab tool and I'll grab all of my image frames, like that. Oh, I forgot to do the sliding. 1 second. Let me do that real quickly. Okay, so as I was saying, I'll grab this whole thing, this whole row. You don't need the shooting row because that doesn't charge. I will create a new project. So it saved my height. I'll take from the palette from the current project, and I'll just paste this in here. So then what I'll do is I'll go to the charge. I'll select with the this tool, the dropper tool, which is just control and then click, and then I will bucket this whole thing, no isolated fill, and there we go. And then I'll just edit manually the eyes, and then I'm going to repeat this similar process for the charging frames. One more thing. Well, this probably won't be the last thing, but an important reminder is to save often. So you can do it through here. You never know when something bad might happen. You could lose all your progress. So just remember to save often, because it could save you a lot of time in case something bad does go wrong. Another thing before I get onto the rush abilities, you can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel if you have a mouse, or you can just pan in and out with the trackpad. Never mind, I just learned that the trackpad actually lets you scroll through colors, which is odd because you have to press control and use the scroll wheel to do that with the mouse. So I guess if you want to zoom in and out conveniently, you're going to want to get a mouse. Yeah. Alright, so for the sake of time, I'm going to be skipping the super adapter and the proto shield. It's the same principle. It's basically just your default Mega Man sprites, and then you're adding either the shield or the armor over top of them. So it's not too hard to do. So I'm going to just skip over that because I don't really have time to do all of this. So I will go over the special effect animations though. So for default Mega Man, so for the frozen frame, we're lucky and we actually have those here. So I can just copy and paste these. And then I'm just going to edit the colors of the regular hurt frame to match this frozen color. This frozen frame is for when you get hit by Shade Man's eye beams. So this one's easy. It's just you fill in everything that isn't black with white for your standard frame. So there's that, and then the burning sprite. It's not too difficult either, so I'm gonna grab our hurt frame again, and for the first frame, it's just you're coloring it black. Next frame, we're going to just change the colors a little bit. So we want the outline to be in black, so our black border here has to be this dark orange color, and then we'll change the inside to light and then black for the secondary color. And then similarly here, it's sort of like the charging frame, so if you think of it like that, it's a bit easier. This last frame, you can add a little bit of you can see there's these extra pixel kind of smoking effects. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. Alright, and then the last frames are the frames for when you get stuck in the little orange things that Slash Man drops. It's basically just a weapon similar to your weapon palette change, so this is another easy one. So I'm going to do that really quickly. Alright, now that we have what we've set out to do today done, I'm just gonna test it out in the game to see how it looks, and then we'll make some changes accordingly. Alright, so we have our game open. So I'm just gonna enter the super password so we can get all the items from the start. Oops. And then I'm just gonna quickly look at whatever and see if I need to change anything. Alright, so one thing I caught was that the charge animation looked a little weird, and it turns out I pasted these frames wrong, so it's shifted over too. So I'm just gonna fix that really quickly. Alright, so I'm back to testing, and I fixed the charge animation. The running animation looks a bit weird, but I don't really want to change the sprites to fix it, to be honest. This is the best I can do with the sprites I chose to use. So let me get on a ladder, so I can test out the ladder sprites. So there's the sidestep, and let's see if I can get the blinking frame. There we go. Alright, let's test out some weapons. Yep. That one looks a bit off. I think the last frame has to move over a bit, so I'm gonna do that also right now. Alright, so I changed the frame so it looks a little nicer now, and I also changed one of the jump frames so it would look nicer too. So it's that. Ooh. There you can see one of my sprites went a little bit too... I went a little bit too far to the right, so it bled into the next one. So I'm gonna have to move that sprite one back. Okay, so let's see how the ladders work, or look. Oh yeah. Alright, so we're just going to be changing that one slash claw frame, and then that should be all. We can check rush, but we only really changed the palette there, so that should be everything. Alright, so I did the slash claw frame, so should look good now. Well, as good as it can look. So, yeah, there's that. Then next I'll check out the different types of damaged frames. Alright, so we're gonna do the freeze man fight and then get frozen to see how that looks. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. We're gonna be doing the Turbo Man fight for the burn. Nice. So there's that. Okay. So then next we'll go to Shade Man to test out the Frozen, and then Slash Man for the last ones. Alright, so here's Shade Man. Let's see if this one looks good. Alright, nice. And then last up is Slash Man. Okay, so now we're gonna test out the last thing, and then that should be everything. Oh, dang. Nice! Okay, there it is. That's good. Okay, cool. Now that we've checked to see if all the sprites look decent, I think that's all we have for this part. If there's any sprites that to you look off when you're doing yours, you probably just have to play with it a little bit, move it right or left, up or down, whatever. Typically that's the most of the problem, that or you've made the sprite too long or too tall and it won't fit into the grid, so you end up getting parts of it cut off. So it's just playing with it. Sometimes it can be a bit annoying with the trial and error, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. So I hope you learned something from this, and if you didn't, that's okay. There's still more parts, so if you're still waiting for whatever, it is coming. It just will take a little bit, so just hold on. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I will answer those, and that should be all. So with all that said, see you guys later. Brave out.